Musa said the legitimate action by the Ait'S protest has been hijacked and hoodlums have had a field day, looting and destroying properties. Colonel Musa said the hijackers had perfected a plot to call out the army in a similar manner done to the police, describing it as a mischievous and deliberate misrepresentation of the troops' efforts to ensure law and order.
Now the detractors, alongside their local and international collaborators, have mischievously and deliberately misrepresented troops' effort to ensure compliance with the curfew imposed by legitimate civil authorities in Lagos and other states. These agitators are falsely accusing the Nigerian army of being responsible for the activities of miscreants, despite glaring evidence to the contrary. They have continually threatened to report the Nigerian army to International Criminal Court and also threatened various forms of sanction against personnel and their families. Thankfully, however, a large percentage of Nigerians and international community have started seeing through the smoke screen of falsehood and deliberate misrepresentation of facts being orchestrated by enemies of Nigeria and have retracted their earlier false publications.
Avoided talking explicitly about the Lekki Tollgate incident, but implied that the army's action was against miscreants.
He used the opportunity to re-emphasize that none of the PSOs, GOCs, field commanders, and other officers and soldiers of the Nigerian Army should be afraid of the International Criminal Court for carrying out their legitimate duties as stated in the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. Further adds that they have every right under the Constitution to carry out assigned legitimate roles of maintaining law and order in aid of civil authorities and other security agencies.
A widening clampdown appears to be underway against the growing spate of warehouse looting across the country. Cross River State Governor Professor Ben Ait'S has charged security agencies currently operating in the state to commence a house-to-house search for critical state and private assets looted by hoodlums in Calabar and its environs. Ait'S, who was accompanied by some service commanders in the state, promised that the welfare of the youths will be prioritized. He, however, advised those who looted critical assets of the state and private homes to return them or face the consequences. He urged the security agencies to take legitimate action to ensure that calm returns to the state, especially as the government is already working towards ensuring the demands of those who genuinely participated in the Ait'S march are met.
What was happening here? And I'm happy with the level of support we have on ground now. We cannot accept this anymore. This is not acceptable. Why would somebody go beyond the boundaries of logic, the boundaries of hunger, and just take to the level of vandalism, arson, and destruction? What are you venting on?
Commissioner of Police Abdulkadir Jimoh said peace has returned to the city as some of the hoodlums have been arrested.
See that the curfew imposed is being enforced, and in no distant time, peace will return to the state.
Federal Capital Territory, Mohammed Bello has ordered the arrest and prosecution of those who broke into the warehouse in Gwagwalada Area Council and looted food items from the store. Bello gave the order during an emergency security meeting with the heads of various security agencies in Abuja this Monday.
A few days ago, precisely on Friday, 23rd October 2020, a well-planned and coordinated mob attack was launched on the peaceful city of Ilorin, the Kwara State capital. The mob, in several thousand, led by criminally minded persons, some of them.
That was not the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory. We'll get to that story later in the program. In the meantime, joint security operatives in Kwara State have arrested 144 suspects in connection with last Friday's looting across private and public businesses in Ilorin, the state capital. The State Commissioner of Police, who is also the spokesperson of the joint securities agencies in the state, Commissioner of Police Kayode Egbetukun, disclosed this while parading the suspects at the state police headquarters in Ilorin, the state capital. Egbetukun said 2 warehouses belonging to the state government and other private businesses were looted and various items stolen have been recovered, adding that the arrests will be a continuous exercise.
In several thousand, led by criminally minded persons, some of them notorious criminals, successfully looted 2 warehouses belonging to the state government and several other shops belonging to private individuals. As at this moment that I'm addressing you, a total number of 144 suspects have been arrested and a large number of stolen items, looted items, have been recovered. Behind us here, you will see the 144 suspects that have been so far arrested. The arrest and recovery is a continuous exercise. They are going to court.
Tukun added that those who willingly surrendered the stolen items will not be prosecuted or paraded before the press.
Will not be prosecuted. They will not be paraded before the press. Their sins will be forgiven. I want to encourage them, those who don't want us to come and arrest them, recover the items from them, and charge them to court, to willingly surrender the items to us.
In a related development, the Nigeria Labour Congress has demanded the release of all COVID-19 palliatives yet to be distributed. The NLC, in a statement, said the relief palliatives and provisions are believed to have been procured by government to relieve citizens of the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown and associated hardship. The statement said it's obvious that the palliatives that were procured by government for immediate distribution to the mass of the people at their critical time of need and assuage their hardship occasioned by the lockdown were hoarded and held back by some officials. The NLC says it questions why this has not been made known to the public. All right, if you're just joining us, this is the mood of the nation. Now, the sudden upsurge in the spate of looting and other crimes, particularly the raids of government warehouses containing COVID-19 relief items, will be our focus on the program this Monday. We'll be looking how we got to this level and trying to look at the many sides to the story and the many demands and, of course, the attempts by the authorities to fight back and protect these warehouses from further looting. We'll be joined by our panel of discussants to take a look at this in just a moment. Stay with us.
As protests against police brutality engulfs major cities. Young Nigerians are calling for a better deal in their country, a right to life and decent living. They are united by a collective sense of nationalism, propelled by the desire for good governance, human rights, and justice. The protests have continued unabated, the protesters unwavering in their demands. AIT brings you exclusive reports from the protest grounds with live feeds and interviews laced with expert analysis of the issues and policy options for the government. Join us as we gauge the mood of the nation, live on Africa Independent Television and live streaming on AIT.live and on all our social media platforms. Is at a boiling point as protests against police brutality engulfs major cities. Young Nigerians are calling for a better deal in their country, a right to life and decent living. They are united by a collective sense of nationalism, propelled by the desire for good governance, human rights, and justice. The protests have continued unabated, the protesters unwavering in their demands. AIT brings you exclusive reports from the protest grounds with live feeds and interviews laced with expert analysis of the issues and policy options for the government. Join us as we gauge the mood of the nation, live on Africa Independent Television and live streaming on AIT.live and on all our social media platforms.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching The Mood of the Nation on Africa Independent Television. That's our continued coverage on and analysis of developments in and around the End SARS protest. Now, just before the break, I mentioned that the sudden upsurge in the spate of looting and other crimes, especially the raid of government warehouses said to be containing COVID-19 relief items, is what's going to be engaging our attention. Also to be engaging our attention is the resistance that the authorities have started to put up. You saw in some of the reports we took earlier there that arrests have been made. And in fact, there have been arrests made across the country, and state governments have been talking tough and also been talking gentle too, to try and encourage those who have stolen or made away, if I can use that language, with relief items to return them. Well, we're going to be taking a look at the development so far with a particular focus on why there's a sudden focus and sudden upsurge on COVID-19 relief item warehouses and other developments. And joining me to take a look at this, we have a full house of discussants. To my immediate left, it's my pleasure to welcome Dr. Brown Ogwefun. Dr. Brown Ogwefun is the Executive Director of the African Initiative for Transparency, Accountability and Leadership. Dr. Ogwefun is also the former President of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. Doc, many thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for having me, and good evening, Nigerians.
And to Dr. Ogwefun's left, we have Friday Sani. Friday Sani is the country head of the International Human Rights Commission. Many thanks for coming on The Mood of the Nation.
Thank you so very much.
And to his left, we have Ogbaji Oloko, who is a political analyst and social commentator. Many thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure. Good evening.
Okay, perhaps, Doc, maybe I should start with you. Perhaps we should start by gauging where we really are, where we talk about this End SARS crisis. We have an idea of where we are coming from, but it's very difficult for anybody to put his finger on where we really are right now, especially with different statements coming from different quarters.
Thank you so very much. Once again, thank you for having me, and good evening once again, Nigerians. Before I delve into that, there is need to understand that when conflict arises in any organization, in any country, there will be need for us to be able to drill down to know what really caused it, what are the pillars sustaining the conflict, and like you now said, where we are currently. Because the conflict we are looking at in Nigeria today is just a tip of the iceberg. Underneath the ice are several other factors that are propelling the conflict that we have today. Some of them political opponents, some of them communication issues, some of them because we did not look at the early warning signs, therefore. And the streets as such today are being occupied not by the Ait'S people, but by those usually referred to as the common people, the miscreants, and so on and so forth. They are the ones that are now in charge of the streets. If I may use this analogy, it's very difficult for you now to see a big man riding those cars on the street. So they've taken over the streets. Why? Because just like what happened in every other nation that has witnessed some level of high-level conflict that led to almost a disintegration of their system. It starts with protest. It starts with government trying to see what they can do to quell it. It is followed by, agents of destabilization from whatever angle it may be. Shooting and so on and so forth will follow. And then they start burning down all military installations. And before you know it, all our security agencies are off the streets, and the guys who originally were not part of the agenda of what happened initially takes over the street, and that's exactly what we are seeing today.
Okay, can I bring in Friday? What's your take on where we are now?
Well, for me, and counting from the little experience I have had in politics, those that have been given this trademark today, describing them as miscreants, are all agents of politicians. I have an experience in politics. I had the second time in the State House of Assembly of Kogi State. My tenure just ended 2019. I think I have very close experience as to who commits what in politics. You see, I'm so angry that the stakeholders, the elites, the political elites, does not consider the magnitude of what is on ground now. And they're tracing it to politics. That is unfortunate. The reality is that there is a disconnect. And that disconnect has been so undermined for a very long time. This is what has created the current situation that we find ourselves. But as a diplomat, I have no alternative than to be part of those to provide solution to this current situation. But in the face of that, it is unimaginable that the young people, whether you call them miscreants, whether they are criminals now, at the time of supporting politicians, they were never criminals. At the time of carrying ballot boxes, they were never criminals. Whether we call them criminals now, whether we call them miscreants now, whichever name you call them to criminalize them, these are the agents of politicians, very useful human beings. And I tell you, until we get out of denials of what is very obvious, we cannot get out of where we are. We're in a situation where young people on the streets can now go to attack the Nigerian police force, attack the facilities of the Nigerian police force, kill them, butcher them, display some parts of their body. As much as we are against attack on Protestants, we cannot, talking from the international perspective, we cannot be a witness to a situation where the young people will raise their guns, their dangerous weapons against the police and killing them and displaying parts of their body. If we are already saying that what has happened to peaceful Protestants is genocide. And then you can go ahead to begin to attack the police and attack their facilities. Let me tell you, the implication is very high as it is. If we allow this situation to degenerate beyond this week to another week, Nigeria will be in terrible crisis. And it's unfortunate that people are beginning, stakeholders, elites that are supposed to be talking to those they are giving a bad name now in order to hang them, instead of being connected to them, they are in denial to make a lot of, to create a lot of impressions that are wrong.
Okay, let me bring in Ogbaji here. What's your view on the overall, this is an overview on where we are right now?
Well, I think we need to look at a very important aspect of the subject matter. Looting or looters. Who are the looters? The citizens that are misgoverned by the elite, or the politicians that are in the position of their franchise and mandate, or who? I think the word looters should be retracted. And I'm calling on Nigerians, including the medias. The people who are misgoverned are the Nigerians. They are the citizens. They are our brothers. They are our relations. They are, just like my brother has just said, they are the people that has been used to put these people in the government. So why calling them looters? Why calling them, why tagging them criminals? They are not looters.
So what name do you give to somebody that forcefully goes into where there's property and carts it away? I mean, I can't think of another word.
These are grieved Nigerians that fell misgoverned.
Okay, well, look, but we're going to come to this issue of looting and all that, because that seems to be where there's the upsurge of late. Over the last few days, so many different facilities of government have been attacked with things belonging to government carted away. And Doc, how did we, I mean, how did is it that simplistic how we got to it, that people were, I mean, if that's how people, misgovernance is being, the reaction to misgovernance, then I mean, there shouldn't be many warehouses left anywhere in the world.
Thank you once again. Well, like I said, we are all different, and therefore, our thoughts and the way we marshal our points are definitely going to be different.
Yeah.
And everybody has the right, therefore, to say what he believes is the issue. But for me, I believe that we had issues with our communication. And but before we go further, you know, in forum like this, let us agree that Nigeria has gone through some level of stress. Some people have been killed, and so my heart goes to all those people who lost their lives, be them the youths, the security agents, and those businessmen and women who got their money, you know, to do their businesses, and they've lost it in this now. My heart goes to all of them. And indeed, Nigerians who are now also suffering some of the effects of curfew, that dodo seller who will have needed money, so my heart goes to them. Having said that, let us know that, like I said before, I said the conflict you are looking at is just the tip of the iceberg. We may call them anything, but let us look at some of the theories behind this. You see, human relations theory says that when you repress human needs and you misgovern them, just like one of us has said, yes, they will react. But the question is, when we talk about misgovernance, would the misgovernance have led people to loot, or sorry, to have gone into the police station, cut away guns, cut away police uniforms, all right? And then you've gone to take tractors, motorcycles, cars, and so on and so forth. That is no longer food. Those are things that people will say these are for bourgeois and so on and so forth. Which means there are fundamental issues that we've not been able to address. And for us to be able to get to the level we are, name calling will not help anybody. Looking to the past will not help us. We must see the opportunity in the crisis that we have in the country today, because I believe there are opportunities that we need to be able to harvest to get us to where we are. And when you look at what is also happening, we have the forces of change versus the forces of status quo. Whether we like it or not, we did not react quickly to the Ait'S issues, because we would have known from the early warning signs that I mentioned before that many people had pent-up emotions. And I remember writing something on Facebook, and I said that if that first week and second week passed and we were unable to nip it, that people are going to hijack the process. Not just anybody hijacking the process. We saw about 3 forces at play. We saw a situation where cars were burnt in Abuja, for instance. There were no arrests. And then we went to, like you said, maybe we'll get to that later, the Lekki axis, for instance, yes, where you really had the Ait'S protesters that had been quiet, they had been calm, and suddenly something happened to trigger it. So for me, one life is just too many to lose in any part of crisis. So our relational theory says that when there is miscommunication and the led are on the high horses and are unable to communicate in the language that the people will understand, we are definitely going to have issues. So as we are talking today, have we been able to learn any lesson? I don't think so. Can we learn any lesson where we can be able to get these things simmered down, and at the end of the day we move up together as a country? Because if this nation burns, no matter the name we call it, no matter those who are behind it, if this nation burns today, nobody wants to be like other countries that went through 15 years of wars. Like I said, on the street today, you don't have any big man on the street. The people that are going to kill themselves are the same masses. They are looting, they are burning, yes, but they might be burning the houses of the big men, but the big men are not there to be killed. So we must ensure that our words that we are going to be using, whether from the political angle, whether from the civil populace, even those of us who are also analyzing, let it be that we use words that are going to be able to
well chosen.
Yes.
Well, talking about the issue of looting or aggrieved persons, there's this story which will probably help to explain things a little better, both to you at home and our guests. Well, several people were injured this Monday when angry youths and residents stormed a warehouse located near the West African Examination Council's office in the Gwagwalada area of the Federal Capital Territory. And again, COVID-19 palliatives were carted away from the warehouse. Now, the youths and residents around the area told AIT that the people who carried this thing out had no apology for the action and said they can no longer bear hunger and hardship.
The looting of the warehouse containing COVID-19 palliatives started as early as 7:45 a.m. Upon arrival at the warehouse in Gwagwalada, we saw several residents and people from the environs with various food items. For some of them, their action is as a result of the hunger and hardship in the land.
As at yesterday, there was information that the foodstuffs are here and that we should all gather here and take what is rightfully ours. So that's what we came to do today.
This Niger not be so God creator. Now human being, now all of us be. Every day children they die for hungry. I born twins, no food to give them. Since it's Monday, okay, food full year. He's the one they go give us food. Now they beat us like that. Now so all of you know good now.
I get 5 children. I brought 3 plates. I don't see food give them. See my sack empty. And they pack food.
In the stampede, several people were injured.
But this is wrong. They should have given it to us. As we arrange line by line, we'll be able to get this. Most people won't die. A lot of people were dying. People died. On our own right is very wrong.
If you can look the kind of foodstuffs that are here now, parents, children, mothers, everybody are suffering for food. Then they kept this thing here.
Very close to the Gwagwalada warehouse, is another warehouse at Ido Industrial Area where some of the looters who were unable to lay their hands on COVID-19 palliative vandalized the place, removing the windows and door frames. Not minding the presence of security operatives, the looters made away with various bagged items and stationaries.
All right, that was the report on the attack on warehouses in Gwagwalada in the Federal Capital Territory. Well, in response, the Minister of the FCT, Mohammed Bello, ordered the arrest and prosecution of those who broke into the warehouse in the Gwagwalada area and looted food items. The minister gave the order during an emergency meeting with the head of the various security agencies in Abuja this Monday.
Whoever has broken into a store and taken items, whether it is foodstuff or whether it is other manufactured goods, is a thief. That person has taken stolen goods, and the administration with all the security agencies will persecute those who have been identified. So my suggestion is it's very important for anybody who has taken anything out of this euphoria or whatever it is of demonstration should return it to where they are taking it, or should take it back to their community leaders. Because at the end of the day, these items can easily be identified. It's just a matter of checking and they will be able to know. And I think everybody that is involved in that is considered as a thief.
Right there, you heard it from the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory on the carting away of items by aggrieved persons, if I can use that language, in Gwagwalada Area Council. Now, Friday, let me turn to you. We heard from the side of the aggrieved persons. We also heard from the minister too. There's also the angle, if you want to argue, also on the side of the aggrieved persons, that these items were COVID-19 palliatives. Some people say some of them have been there for quite some time, which ought to have been distributed earlier, and they probably use that to justify why, if the palliatives couldn't come to them, they decided to go to the palliatives themselves. What do you make of it? I mean, what is the middle ground? Because this will still continue if a permanent solution isn't found to something like this.
My brother, thank you so much. Again, I don't want us to deviate from the substance on ground now. The palliative is minute to the attack against our security agencies, particularly the Nigerian police force. I don't look at the palliative as anything major compared to the current attack against the Nigerian police and killing them. If you watch carefully, for some of us, like the International Human Rights Commission angle, we have up to 600 volunteers in Nigeria, and we have since activated them to give us sensitive report concerning public safety and public security. And the report we have received so far indicated that the police are currently not having the morale to even accept complaints coming to the DPO, accept complaints coming to the stations, to be able to act on them. And that is very dangerous. We cannot continue. If it goes beyond this week, and the situation remains same, a situation where the morale of the policemen of this country will be very low as not even being able to entertain cases, we are doomed. So I want government and all the stakeholders like we are to take priority in the situation we have found ourselves. I think the current security issue should be dealt with. Don't forget that just minutes back, we have all watched the explanation of the Nigerian army and the mindset of the army currently. Any attempt to bring our army into internal security in the situation we have found ourselves we will be creating more problems for this country. I think all we needed to do at this point is to re-energize the Inspector General of Police to play his role as a man who is in charge of internal security. Nigeria Army is the mirror of our country. We don't need to overexpose them. Bringing them in here will be like overstressing the army. And it will further complicate the current situation we have found ourselves. I believe that the police is up to it. I give it to the Inspector General of Police in the journey so far. Every opportunity was there for the police to return back to the old order, but the current Inspector General of Police resisted it. He disallowed it. And even up till now that we talk, I am so proud that he's yet to go outside the core mandate of the Nigerian police force in a democratic setting. So I think so far I am proud of him, and I will still employ him to maintain the temple, because I know that if the current approach he has adopted continues, fathers and mothers are able to call their children to order, and a genuine meeting is being organized for the young people before the government. I am very sure that this problem will be a thing of the past. Again, I will not fail, because I may not have the same opportunity again. I want to let you know, as long as we continue to use utterances, just like doctors have said, as long as we continue to use utterances that can aggravate crisis in the situation, there is no way we'll come out of this. As analysts that are here, we must be mindful of the kind of words we use. We must be mindful of the kind of directive we give to our children. We must be mindful of the kind of directive we'll give to those carrying out responsibility of government. From all indications, you can see that Mr. President, if you allow me to say my mind, Mr. President is even exonerated from the whole scenario that is playing out now. If you allow me to say it, I will say my opinion in that order, even though I am not one of the fans of Mr. President. But I think I am comfortable to say that a lot of things has happened without Mr. President knowing. This is what I've discovered, counting from the scenario that is playing out now. Therefore, bringing politics into a very sensitive matter that has to do with the future of our children can be very deadly and dangerous. We must begin to gather our children now. Okay, we must call them out from the streets.
Let me bring Ogbaji into this. It's obvious that what both Doc and Friday are saying now is that what we need to look for speedily is a solution, because crises like this can really not be allowed to linger too long, or else it will snowball into something pretty nasty if it's not done. From your assessment, what are the immediate steps? Because I think that's what we should be looking at, the immediate steps to get a gradual journey back to normality.
Well, I think if we ignore the reality and begin to pamper the government that are responsible to the citizenry, the welfare of the citizenry, the property, I think we will miss it. The reality is the leaders, the elite, have taken an oath of office to protect the welfare, life, and property of the people. Have we really looked into the governance, the issues that aggravate to this that has happened? There are a lot of solutions that have been profound. Years upon years, time upon time. Have our leaders look inward, the issues that aggravated this before this time? The answer is no. There is no political will to address those issues, if there are political wills to address those issues, I think and certain that what we are having today wouldn't have been. Come to think about it. The COVID-19 that resulted to palliative. How does the government channel the palliative to reach out to the people? If you are to profound solution to issues, you should also look at the negativity of the issues that will lead to problem before profounding solution. So I think, number one, the government ought to have responded proactively, having known that the palliative is one of the subjects.
Responded proactively to what?
Distributing of those palliative that have been stored. When you have seen a problem coming, you immediately go after the problem. The government ought to have known that Nigerians are hungry. The revenue, the naira exchange to dollar, affect the common woman in the market, affect the common man in the house. Therefore, if you are having resources stuck, what stopped you from releasing those resources? If the president have given an order, or the committee in charge of those resources are properly monitoring, I think the state governors, this is not issue of politics any longer. Hunger does not know PDP. Hunger does not know APC. And therefore, I expected some of the PDP governors have been fleeing to Abuja, running from their states. And you are all being known and aware that the masses that have been in one way or the other taking those items have been practicalized. There are items in the stores. Are there no items in the warehouse? So I expect Nigerians, the leaders, to take proactive measure by releasing those palliatives, just like the government.
So is that the solution? That still remains your solution for now?
Yes.
Okay, so what you're saying now is that in respect of what has happened,
the president should call on all the state governors.
Okay.
And also the COVID-19 committees at the national level, and making sure that every item stock should be released to Nigerians.
At least that should be done as a matter of urgency, and that hopefully will quell all these warehouse raiding. Okay, Doc, Friday said something which I feel was pretty germane, and this is a crisis that cannot be allowed to fester, cannot be allowed to linger too long, because this is where real horrors can start if this is not nipped in the bud. What's your recipe for getting out of this?
Thank you so very much. I do believe and hope that we can rest this early enough. I also believe that if this thing goes beyond this week, we will blame ourselves as a nation for not standing up to defend Nigeria at this particular time. Like I said, NSAS protesters who started, they are already somewhere. Don't let us behave that and believe that because they are now resting, that the issues with them are totally sorted out. Because these are youths that have now known that they have the capacity to change things. So I believe that they are going to be galvanizing that energy towards 2023. That is if we have a country before then. But however,
I pray we do.
I pray we do.
So we must have it.
Exactly, because like I said before, Nigeria is the only country that I have, for instance.
Yes.
And so I'll be sad to see, because if this house is falling, it will fall on everybody.
Yes.
Even the youth themselves. Yes.
Certainly.
Because the people they said they are angry about, they have their visas in their pockets, and they will fly out of this country. They leave us here to kill ourselves. But I haven't said that because we are looking for the solutions. The issues that we have today is, if we are looking for peace at the expense of justice, inequality, we will miss what we need to do as a nation to go back to the pre-conflict situation that we had. So what do we need to do? First is that our planners our politicians and our leaders, we must have a think tank now that will look at the problem that we have as at today as a tree. You know, you have a tree, you have the roots, you have the trunk, and you have the branches and the leaves. Where we are today is because we refuse to deal with the root causes of our issues. Some of those are misgovernance, some of those are corruption, some of those are poverty of the mind, some of those are those we refuse to take to school, some of those are because we have not provided social welfare for them. They now grew into a very big trunk, which of course we saw like the Ait'S, because under the root also you had the brutality of Ait'S, all right, which has now converged into a tree. And that tree, because we were unable to also cut it off when it started as Ait'S in the last 2 weeks, through communication, not through the barrels of the gun, all right, it has now grown into the leaves and the branches. And now the dispersal of seeds through the winds have now landed on very fertile lands, and they have grown. That is what you are seeing today on the streets. So how do we go about it? I think it may not be too rational, but now that we know that people are looking for palliatives and breaking storehouses where foods are, if there are areas where you have food that are palliative, government can begin to release them so that when they know that there is no more shops to break, they can go back home.
Absolutely.
Because my worry in what I have seen is that people could break into the silos where you have beans, corn, that are preserved with some insecticides, which has not totally left its period of, what's it called, time for them to consume it. And they may loot it, take it to the house, and we have Nigerians being poisoned by what has happened. We must also look at that. Having done that, and we have quelled this, I started by saying that this crisis will give us so many opportunities. What are those opportunities? The relational theory also says that when we misinform, when we miscommunicate, we are bound to be where we are today. So the communication from our leaders should not just be, because we are in a democracy, all right? Let me give a little example. Even if we are not going to exonerate our president, something happened which I also love about what he did. Yes, he came out to own up and said, well, all these 5 things you have asked for, I'm going to give it. But that we've already left that stage of the 5. All right, we've now gone into another stage. So I had expected in that speech there will be something that is conciliatory and empathetic, which I had the special assistant on communication also now came, I think, a few days ago to say, anybody that took part in that thing, or all those kids that were shot at, that they will be taken care of, and so on and so forth. That's conciliatory. That's empathy on the side of the people. Then when we now do that, the opportunity will now get moving forward is to now learn that our youths are highly having poverty of the mind because we have not trained them. Look at the people on the street today. I mean, you can see that people are angry. That anger is tending towards almost saying, if Nigeria wants to die, let Nigeria die. Because they see themselves as dead, they are on the ground, and so they are no longer afraid of any fall. So the opportunities is, let us be able to re-strategize as a nation. Let us think of what to do with our youth. Our children that are growing, what can we do for them? In terms of education, it is key. If we want to turn around this country, one of the things we need to do is the education of the people. But as we are in this war front, because as far as I'm concerned, this is war front. As we are in this war front, you cannot be saying education is first thing. So what we must do is open up all those, what's it called? Where you have the stores and the palliatives. Let them know that there is no more palliatives. Let the words please go to them. And for me, I appeal to our youths. I'm a father, I'm a grandfather. I do not want to see any of our children again killed on the streets. For God's sake, these are the future. Though they say that, today is their day, we agree. But you need to be able to live to see another day. We can no longer afford the bloodshed. Our country has seen so much of bloodshed. It is painful to lose the youths that we lost to this crisis. And I believe that Mr. President, as the father of the nation, cannot be tired of reconciliatory gestures to ensure that he is able to palliatively massage the ego of the people so that the people can go back and then call leaders, like my colleague said. We need now as a country to be able to talk. instead of using some level of coercive agencies that will be. Lastly, he made mention of something which is very important. As at today, remember that I said when I was starting, I said the streets have been vacated for the boys, in quotes, that you say are miscreants. They are the king of the roads. How do we take them off? By ensuring that parents need to talk to their children. Uncles need to talk to their children. The church has a role to play. The mosque has a role to play. Our National Assembly members, they have constituency. Let them go back and engage their people. State assemblies, they are from constituencies. Let them go back and begin to engage their people. Let them know that if we have war in this nation, it is not just what they are seeing. Because the children that are on the street today, they did not see Biafran war. So they don't know what war is. Unfortunately, we yanked off history from our calendar. So they didn't even have they don't have the memory of the past. So they don't know how painful it is. And I think going back to the old-time religion and engaging all different stakeholders, I believe we might be able to palliatively rest this while we now plan for a better Nigeria.
Doc, it looks like you like that word palliative. It's a word you seem to like.
What can we now do?
Friday, you are particular on the security angle. Now, you've given advice to youths on. I mean, you're abhorred by the killing of police personnel, and from an International Rights Commission perspective, that's pretty understandable. But from that perspective too, can you also give some advice to security agents too, who have also not been said to be pretty nice of late also?
Well, you see, we are in a situation now. Don't forget that I represent a diplomatic organization in Nigeria. And under the international protocol that guides the diplomatic organization, I am not expected to make a statement that can create troubles. I'm expected to give statements that can end a trouble. Like, seriously, we have many times, time without number, written to the Nigerian police force, even before now, concerning the way and manner administration of justice in Nigeria is being handled by them. And then we have come to a point where, take example from administration of criminal justice, was being clearly insisted upon, and by the grace of God, we have succeeded in some states. We have succeeded in the Federal Capital Territory with the caliber of man we have as the Chief Judge of FCT. Today, administration of criminal justice is a thing of the past in FCT. You know, so you can no longer detain a man within FCT jurisdiction beyond 48 hours. And this is exactly what the international standard should be for all the states of the Federation. And we are already moving towards there. We were slow in moving there, but the protests, the genuine protests of the young people has fast-tracked all of this. And it is now time to give a gap so that we can really, since the speed has taken us there, we should see it implemented.
Yes.
This is exactly what we needed now. And we, on the part of the International Human Rights Commission, we cannot watch for any security man to engage in extrajudicial killings. So also, we will not watch to see a civilian raising arm against both the police, the army, the civil defense, and other security agents.
Or any security personnel.
We cannot see...
So, Father, can I just... time's ticking away. I'd just like to give Ogbaji, he has come up with his solution already, which Doc has alluded to, open up these warehouses, free all the palliatives. But aside palliatives, what other suggestions do you think there are that we can get out of this crisis?
Well,
then, in a couple of minutes, please.
Yes, I think the government should also prosecute those that took advantage over the palliative distribution across the Federation. Because some of this anger that arose from the youth is also credited to politicians that are in charge and have been in custodians of those palliative had happened before, during, and now, the government should set up committee that we have the confidence of the citizens that they are not being shortchanged. If Mr. President can do that, certainly it will also damn the anger of the youth. And I think Mr. President should do this without fear nor favor, without political sentiment. Because the local government chairman, the State House of Assembly, the House of Representatives, the senators, and the governors left those things in store for their 2023 interests. And I think the citizens are watching. Therefore, the president should start from the political elite. Because this palliative left the government at the central to the state. So what happened to this?
Okay, so basically what you're saying is that there's need for an inquiry into what has happened. In addition to the speedy release,
yes,
let's know what's happened to these palliatives and why they're still where they are and what we need to do from then. Okay, I think we're just going to have to leave it like that, gentlemen. We can go on and on. We'll probably be here till morning discussing this issue as it's becoming more and more interesting by the passing minute, but we have to go now. We've been looking at the sudden upsurge in the spate of looting and other crimes, particularly the raid of government warehouses in the face of and the follow-up to protests which appeared to have died down and have been replaced by these new forms of crime. We've also tried to look at solutions, how to get a speedy exit from this crisis so that we can get back to the pre-protest situation and begin to make progress from there. And we've been looking at these through the eyes of our guests. Dr. Brown Ogbefun. Dr. Brown Ogbefun is the Executive Director of the African Initiative for Transparency, Accountancy and Leadership. He's also the former President of the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. Doc, many thanks for your time. Thank you so very much. We were also joined by Friday Sani. Friday Sani is the country head of the International Human Rights Commission. Friday, many thanks for your time and useful comments too.
Thank you so much.
And our good friend Ogbaji Oloko, a political analyst and social commentator and a very passionate man about things in and around Nigeria. Ogbaji, many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's where we're going to wrap it up on this edition of The Mood of the Nation. You know, it's a continuous analysis of developments in and around Nigeria as to the things that have happened since the End-SARS protests began. We will continue on this line. Hopefully, the situation will change for the better and we will have greater stories to tell. Until we come your way again, I'm Oloyede Owurum, asking you to have a safe evening and thanks very much for being a part of the program.
Nigeria is at a boiling point as protests against police brutality engulfs major cities. Young Nigerians are calling for a better deal in their country, a right to life and decent living. They are united by a collective sense of nationalism, propelled by the desire for good governance, human rights and justice. The protests have continued unabated, the protesters unwavering in their demands. AIT brings you exclusive reports from the protest grounds with live feeds and interviews laced with expert analysis of the issues and policy options for the government. Join us as we gauge the mood of the nation, live on Africa Independent Television and live streaming on AIT.live and on all our social media platforms.
EndSARS protest, which gained far-reaching global following by Nigerians at home and in the diaspora, as well as friends of Nigeria, began as a very strong message to the Nigerian government to begin to make amends where necessary, to put in place the mechanisms for a new Nigeria that aligns with the best practices of governance as obtained in advanced and civilized democracies of the world. Championing the EndSARS protest, our Nigerian youth, considered as the most potent and largest segment of the Nigerian population. The protests were very well organized, and all the youth from the 6 geopolitical divides of the country decided to jettison ethnic and religious fault lines which have held the nation bondage over the centuries, and focused on an ideologically driven campaign, leveraging on the strength of the average Nigerian youth on technology to advertise the merits of their message among all the youth, adults and friends of Nigeria. This way, Nigerian youth were able to garner an